Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Pelado Creations Shop Tour Live. This is my first live video, so we'll see how this goes. Let's start the tour. Let's start with what's behind me here. My workbench and French cleat wall and all other sorts of fun storage here. So let's take a look. I've got the workbench. So I built this workbench out of materials that I reclaimed from a prior workbench that was in the house when we bought it. So I bought this house a little over 2.5 years ago, and this plywood and actually this 2x4 were part of the original workbench. It was an L-shaped bench in this corner right here. And basically it was just the 2x4s and then the plywood on top. So not a very sturdy workbench, and so ripped that all out and built this guy. So I've got these 2x3s that I ripped out of 2x6s, repurposed one of the 2x4s from the prior workbench, and then also repurposed the plywood tops. Now the repurposing, I didn't really repurpose them because I'm using them for the same purpose as before, just transferred them from the old workbench to this one. The 2x3s that I cut out of 2x6s, you can see the vertical supports. I actually used the full 2x6 instead of cutting them down to 2x3s. And I'm actually somewhat proud of this build, because the last workbench I built at our last house, the method of construction was not nearly as nice. And so what I did mostly was I'd have my vertical supports like this guy come up and just be screwed into the top, kind of like right there, but the whole thing would be built like that. And whereas on this one, I've got the vertical supports coming up and being under the work surface. So I've got that strength from being on top. So any force going down is going straight into that board instead of just relying on the screws. And so like that quite a bit better. Also, I used a little bit more in-depth techniques on this in order to cut out those notches and have the 2x3s come in and have that support directly into the vertical support rather than just screwing them in. So they are screwed in, but they're also notched in, so they've got better support that way. One area where, if I can keep that hose out of the way here, one area where I could have improved is when I cut these notches. I tried doing it just on the circular saw, but I didn't feel like I was getting a very quality cut. And so then I took it over the table saw, but I got a rounded cut, so it comes out right there. So, it's not the greatest, but whatever. So anyway, so that's the workbench. Got, 2 4-foot sections. It's 2 foot deep, and so 8 foot wide, and it works pretty well. After building the workbench, what was above the workbench before, on this wall here and that wall there, used to be pegboard going up quite a ways, and it was actually quite a selling point when I first bought the place. But what I realized was that I really didn't like the pegboard. It wasn't that as useful for me as what I expected. And so I ended up ripping down the pegboard and just selling it to someone on Facebook Marketplace. So then I got some plywood, threw some plywood on top here, and then put the magnet strips on the bottom, which I really like, just because it makes all of those tools so accessible, and pretty easy storage. And then built all these French cleat holders up above. And I was intending to do a lot more French cleat holders than I've got done so far. But some of the space is taken up by the sign that my wife made me for Christmas. Um, and the name Pelado, for those of you that don't know, in Spanish it means bald, and it was a nickname that I got on my when I served a mission in Argentina many, many years ago. Even as a 19, 20-year-old kid, I was let's say follically challenged, and so that was a nickname that I got there. Anyway, moving right along, I do have a few different French cleat organizers here. One of the first ones I did was with this one for the sandpaper. And then I've got a bunch of pretty easy ones with basically just dowels sticking out like this. That's just a nail up there holding those saws in. And then this one's pretty easy with just the dowels coming out of the board, and then this one for the clamps. And so then I've got the one for my drill and impact driver. Got the one over here for the squares. I actually have a video about making that one. Let's see, let's come over here. My wife told me I needed something to hold my pencils and pens. And so I was like, oh, okay. And so I built that. And it's not great. You can, if we zoom in, let's see, there we go. You can see how the edges and corners are not that great. So that was one of the first little boxes that I made using my table saw. And what I found is that the table saw, the fence had a gouge in it, and so I wasn't really able to get very clean lines on it because of that gouge. It would kind of interrupt things. So I ended up putting an auxiliary fence on the table saw, and that's helped quite a bit. Still not getting as clean of lines as I'd like, but much better than what I got with that little box. So I've actually got a video about putting on that auxiliary fence if you're interested in how I did that. Moving right along. Oh, I made these boxes a little bit later, and so you can see they're a little bit better shape. Still have a little bit of unevenness, and didn't cut through quite as well as I'd like, but whatever. So I got one to hold brushes, another for epoxies and super glues there. And I need to put in a bunch more little holders up here. I really liked this holder. This is for my trim router. So it just fits in right there. And then I've got a little holder for the collet reducer, and little holders for the vacuum the vacuum port that flips on there. And this works for my Centec hose system. And then on the side, I've got little magnets that I epoxied in, so that way I don't lose the wrench that goes to the trim router. All right, so then I've got my French cleat holder, or some French cleat holder for the Forstner bits and step drill bits. And I've actually got a video on this as well if you're interested in how I made that. Not too complicated. And then holding hammers and mallets, again, pretty easy with the dowels there. And let's see, we've got my little charging station over here. This is one of the reasons that I didn't like the old pegboard setup, because my pegboard didn't allow for anything else to go up on the walls, and my chargers were taking up valuable space on my workbench. And, putting batteries in, taking batteries out was not the easiest because it was a two-handed operation, whereas now I can do it one-handed and not have to worry about securing the chargers. And then I've also got my little glove dispenser here, which is nice. Put in a little spot for the stereo receiver to go, and then up above I've got some speakers up there. If you can see too well, I don't know. All right, so after building out this wall and the shelving here, actually before I built the shelving, I put in this shelving up here, and as you can see up there, I've got a bunch of 12-foot boards stored. I got those from a guy that was getting rid of a deck and had a bunch of 2x6s. So that is the source of the 2x6s here and the 2x3s here that I ripped down from 2x6s. And so I had a bunch more boards, so I needed somewhere to store them because they had just been lying on the floor in the garage shop here. And I also needed a place to store the bicycles. So they had just been up on the ceiling, so you can see those hooks up there. But I was pretty much the only one in the family that could get those bikes down. And so thought it might be a little easier for my wife and kids to access the bicycles if they were a little closer to the ground, and so went with this design, which has worked pretty well, even though we haven't really used the bicycles all that much since I did that project. All right, moving right along on the tour. Oh, down below the workbench, let me get a little bit further back so it's easier to see. Down below the workbench, I've got some storage there. So you can see down here, I've got the router table. Picked that up at a yard sale a while back. And I actually had a router table, a Ryobi router table that I picked up at a pawn shop years and years ago, before I really knew anything about router tables. Bought one from this pawn shop, and it had a rigid router in it. And I think I got it for a pretty good deal, but never really learned to use it very well until somewhat recently. And after I started using it, I realized, hey, this isn't really a great router table because it wasn't flat, and the fence was not straight. So I put an auxiliary fence on it, but then I still had the problem of the table not being flat. So I ended up selling that on Marketplace, and I had already picked this one up from the yard sale, and it's a much better router table. But I'm actually in the process of making my own, and you can see kind of over here, it's the design from Stumpy Nubs. He has a video he put out a little while back about making a portable router table, and so that's in process. Just like a lot of other things in my shop, like this is in process. My daughter wants me to finish this. It was a bunk bed that we're going to try and convert into a well, it's hard to describe, but this one's been in progress for over a year, and so maybe one of these days I'll get that finished. But the router table here, I was initially thinking to just build a little stand around it, one that I'd be able to put a little lip on and put it into my Moxon vise. But recently I was thinking about this cabinet. This cabinet came a while back from my brother-in-law, and you can see I just have a sheet of plywood over the top of it, but he actually brought this over to me with a table saw. And I'll just scoot this over a bit. So it had an old Delta table saw that did not work all that great. And so I sold that and picked up a different table saw right there. And I've got several videos about that table saw. But I was just thinking the other day, I could use this and repurpose this cabinet and turn it into my router table station with the home built router table. So I might end up just doing that, but haven't decided exactly. All right, moving right along. Let's take a look at the table saw. So this is the table saw I mentioned, and built a little stand for it. So it's nice and mobile. Move it around anywhere I want. I don't usually have it set up right here. And you can see I've got the power obviously right here, but it's plugged into a little switch that, oh, it looks like it's snapped. So that's great. I must have bumped it up somewhere. Have to fix that. But that plugs into both the table saw plugs into the switch as well as the shop vac underneath. And the shop vac is connected to, well, the shop vac is usually connected to the cyclone separator and cyclone separator to the dust port. But I've been trying to make some improvements on that. So it's actually not connected to those right now. But whenever I power up the table saw, it powers up the shop vac as well. And so that tends to make my shop not get nearly as dirty. And I like that. I made this table saw sled somewhat recently, and just made it out of plywood that I reclaimed from some shipping containers that were available on Facebook Marketplace. And so, probably most don't have writing on them and everything, but this one works pretty well for me. And I also repurposed this MDF from I built a little extended fence for my miter saw using this MDF, but I didn't do it quite right, and so it kept breaking off. So that's why it's got that's why this is broken off, is because of how I built that fence before. And then I've also got things routed in there for the micro jig attachments, so you can see the dovetailed holes in there. That's what those are for. And so when this broke a couple different times, I glued it back together and reused it. And then after it broke the last time, I decided that I need to just find a different purpose for it. And so then I found a good purpose for it, because it's nice and flat and gives me a good reference surface for the table saw sled. And then I just got a little ruler here and super glued that on. So it comes off periodically. You can see it's kind of coming off a little bit there, but a little bit more super glue is just fine for that. Paste it back down. I've got a little stop block that I made right here, also using that micro jig system. So just slide that back and forth and just read on it right here for whatever the distance needs to be, and lock it in. Speaking of the miter saw, got that right over here. Got this one. This is one of the few tools that I bought new and got a good deal on it. It was on sale at the Home Depot. They advertised it as on sale, but the Home Depot that I went to pick it up, they said, hey, you know what? We're actually not participating in that sale. And so, you just have to pay retail price for it. And I was like, I'm not doing that. And got pretty upset, but decided not to buy it at all and left the store. But then when I was in the parking lot, I turned around, went back in, talking to the manager, and said, hey, this feels like bait and switch because it's advertised on the website as the sale price. I come in and you're like, oh no, sorry, that sale's only for other stores. And he then gave me the sale price. So that was nice. So picked it up there. I built this miter saw stand a long time ago. This was one of the first things I built, and it kind of shows the construction style that I talked about before, um, where this is how I built my workbench at the last house. So I've just got the 2x4s as the vertical supports, and then those are just screwed directly into the top rather than having the 2x4 underneath. So it doesn't have nearly as much support because it's only as strong as those screws. Now, I'm not expecting a ton of force to be applied on this top surface, and so the screws have been more than sufficient, but it's just not nearly as strong a system as what I've got going on with the workbench now. So, you learn different things over time, and so that's been an improvement. Right next to the miter saw is the bandsaw. So I bought the bandsaw used from a couple on, I think, either Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. I can't remember which. But it's just a Craftsman, and my wife put some tape over the name there. I think she wrote something on it. Oh, I can't read exactly what she wrote, but it's something that she wanted me to to do. I think something she wanted me to make with it. So it's just the Craftsman 12-inch bandsaw / sander. I've never used it as a sander, but I can. And so I bought this for pretty inexpensive from this couple that was moving and didn't want to move the bandsaw, and it came with the stand. I recently switched out the wheels because the wheels that it came with were pretty tiny and just didn't roll around the shop as easily as I'd like. So I put these guys on that are the same kind of wheels that I have on other stuff in here, like the table saw cart, and they have brakes on them so I can secure it in place, whereas the old one, it was just the little caster wheels. And then I've got a fence that I made. It's not the greatest fence, but it kind of slides back and forth and just kind of hugs the edges there. You can see. You might think that the holes here are kind of odd, and they are. That's because I built something else for the bandsaw and decided to repurpose it. So basically I made a little circle jig using a larger piece of plywood. And after having made the jig, I realized, you know what, I didn't do this as well as I would like. And so I ended up just starting over and making a new jig, and that is over here. And rather than starting with some salvaged plywood, I started with a salvaged old shelf that's got a melamine top, and so that made it a lot smoother. And then instead of using just some plywood, I used these guys that I made out of some hardwood, and it's actually two pieces of hardwood, or hardboard, I mean. It's actually two pieces of hardboard that I glued together, so you can kind of see right there. And so both sides are very smooth. And so the hardboard on the melamine is pretty smooth and goes pretty nice. So I'm a big fan of the new and improved system here. And so anytime I need to make a circle, I've got the circles. And so then I've just got the holes marked out every inch. So however wide I need to make the circle, it's right there. Nice and easy. So I can just take whatever I want to cut the circle out of, tape it onto my little templates there. This one is for smaller circles and this guy for larger ones. And tape them onto those and move them in, cut them out, and works pretty well. All right, moving right along. So we talked about the workbench. We talked about the bandsaw and the miter saw. We haven't talked about my little vacuum shop vac slash cyclone separator setup. I've actually got a video about this. So way back when, actually when I was working on sanding those guys down, I realized that my shop vac was not suctioning very well anymore. And the reason for that was the filter was getting clogged. And so I was over at my local hardwood dealer talking to them about that problem and thinking about maybe spending, well, I didn't really consider this very much, but they had some Festool dust extractor systems and it's like, ooh, that'd be nice to not have so much dust clogging the filters. But they said, you could just get a cyclone separator. So I was not really familiar with those before. And so I ended up getting this set up and it works really well. So very little dust is making it to the shop vac now. And so the filter lasts a long time. And then I just have to empty out this bucket periodically. And I really like that. Now, I mentioned before that I got these boards from Facebook Marketplace for free, by the way, from someone getting rid of their deck. I also talked about the making this table saw sled out of reclaimed materials, some old shipping containers that I also got for free that were just listed on Facebook Marketplace. Up on this upper shelf there, I've got a bunch more of the materials that I got from shipping containers. And a while ago, my wife was getting a little frustrated with all the materials that I had just sitting out here in the garage. It was, to be fair, it was a bit of a mess. There wasn't really much room to maneuver around, but she doesn't really ever come out here, so I didn't really see what she was so upset about. But she was like, "Don't get any more wood until you use up some of this stuff already, right?" And like, all right, I'll see what I can do. But I was like, what? It's not really that much wood. It's just disorganized because it was in various states of taking staples out and nails out and trying to get it into a more usable state. And I figured once I organized it better, she'd realize that there's not really that much. And so one of the things that I did to organize it was I built this plywood storage cart. Now, I saw a bunch of plywood storage carts on YouTube and claimed some inspiration from there, but pretty much all of them were 8 feet wide and then 4 feet tall. And it's like, what? That's takes up way more space than what I want to use up. And so I decided to go the opposite, go 8 feet tall and 4 feet wide. And so I just built this primarily out of materials that I salvaged. And so I've got these 2x4s going up and then 2x4s at an angle so that my plywood can rest on that. And so then I've just got a bunch of the plywood and OSB and whatever else hanging out on this side. And one of the other things you can see over here is my my circular saw guide. So I use these two. All right, so one is the 8 foot long, and then this one's I think just 3 feet. So for smaller cuts. So I don't have a track saw, and so I made these guys to use my circular saw as if it were a track saw, and they work pretty well. And I've got a separate video about those as well, so you can check that out. I think I called it "No Track Saw, No Problem." So if you're interested in how to make those, you can check out that video. All right, so then I made this guy. I was initially thinking to make some shelves for this middle section here, and then just store stuff horizontally there. But the stuff that I had did not really lend itself to that. So I have just kind of this eclectic collection of different stuff. some of which is stuff that I got from the shipping containers. Some of it is stuff that I got from my brother. He was just trying to clear out some room in his garage, and I was happy to take some of that material. So a lot of these, shelves, or this was a door for probably some sort of cabinet, and it's one of the shelves that I think there's more right here. This is the same shelving material that I made my bandsaw circle cutting jig out of, and so it made a lot more sense for me to leave that open and just put stuff there. And then here on the end, I was intending to make little partitions here in the inside of this little railing, but I haven't gotten around to that yet. So maybe at some point I'll make some partitions, and then the idea was that I'd have some longer, thin material there, some shorter stuff here, the shortest stuff over here. But I just haven't got that far so far. I've got other scrap material just in some boxes over here. So this is some smaller stuff, and just as I need it, I can pull from there. And all right, let's see. So I got this guy on wheels, locking wheels. The locks haven't really been very necessary, because what I realized is after I got all of this plywood and other boards on there, this guy is really heavy. So it's not the easiest to move. So the brakes are not too necessary. I'm thinking to switch those wheels out to something a little bit bigger. I think that'll make it a little easier to move, but I'm not excited about unloading everything off of here and then putting it on its side so that I could actually switch out the wheels. So maybe we'll do that on a future Facebook Live, or not Facebook, sorry, a future YouTube Live. This is YouTube, not Facebook, right? All right. If anyone has any questions, feel free to jump on the chat and ask them. I haven't really been paying too much attention to see if there are any questions, so I don't see any, so that's good. And let's see, what else do you want to see about the shop? The spacing on this workbench. I initially built the workbench lower shelf. The spacing that I made for that was based on my old Ryobi router table. I wanted to make sure that I could fit that router table underneath. And now that I got rid of it, I don't really have that need. So, it's still how I determined how to build that. And let's see, what else do you want to see? I've got my planer, picked that up from a guy used, and got the jointer from the same guy, and the dust extractor from the same guy. Still haven't hooked this guy up because I don't have the hoses for it. One of these days I'll track those down. And I've got my scroll saw there, and again, picked that up used, someone on Facebook Marketplace. And the air compressor, actually bought that one new from Harbor Freight. And then I've just got various things stored down here, various other tools, some other of the Makita line there, reciprocating saw, circular saw, multi-tool, and then just various other things stored under there. And this is the shop. Over on this side, it's mostly just garage storage, but I've got a few things over here, some of the cleaners and stuff, and then my drill press over here that I just pull and put on the workbench when I need to use it for something, and then my little router collection down here. I've just been picking up some routers along the way. This router I was intending to use on the router table that I'm making. And then these routers, this one I'm intending to use for when I want to make, when I want to flatten slabs. And then this one, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do with it, but it was such a good deal. I couldn't pass it up. So, oh, and then this guy I got from the same guy that I bought those, the planer and jointer and dust extractor from. And I also got most of what's in this bin from that guy, as well as a bunch of the clamps that are up here. These Bessie clamps and these C clamps and a bunch of other stuff. So got a really good deal on that, which made me very happy. All right, so that's a nice little overview of the shop. And if you have any questions about the shop, how I've got it organized, how I've got things going, feel free to get on the comments and ask a question, and I will do my best to tell you what's going on. And I think that's it for the shop. Oh, just one other thing. This this foam board, you can see it's got a lot of marks in it because I use this to support my cuts that I'm doing with the circular saw on these guides. So that's probably it for the tour. And man, don't forget to subscribe and like and share and all that good stuff. So we will see you on the next video.